the 3 dantian, palming to start with for the head point. Friction, just to warm up the palms. Keep the shoulders relaxing. Have the tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth in preparation for bringing the hands up to the eyes. Then stretch the arms out just to stop your sleeves clinging to your arms, and then bring the hands into the eyes, trying to block out all the light. The eyes can no longer see anything, so they relax. Inside, you're looking into that point behind the eyes, close to where the tip of the tongue is on the roof of the mouth. So the midbrain. Then bringing the hands down. And now the blinking. Closing the eyes, closing the fists, and pulling in the dantian, and then releasing. As you pull the belly in, feel that squeezing into the Ming Men. And now let's try the heart point. So again, rubbing the hands. Tip of the tongue still on the roof of the mouth. placing the hands on the heart. The heart's quite a big range, so it's from between the nipples up, almost up to the throat, so you can choose where to put the hands. You want a sense that the heat of your hands is sinking into the heart, but also a sense that your heart is coming out into your hands. So the chest is sort of filling. And what we want to do is register how differently we feel depending upon which of the centers we're concentrating on. And now, keeping your hands where they are, just start turning the head side to side. And now the lower dantian. So rubbing the hands again. Tip of the tongue still on the roof of the mouth. Then the hands over the lower dantian. We want to be quite specific with that point. We want to feel it as being a real locality. Detached, dispassionate. Detached without being indifferent. So you see things as they really are when you have your mind in the dantian. Quiet and unemotional. Let the head sway side to side. My dantian is still, but my head is moving. Tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. That's like an anchor that allows the rest of your head to be relaxed and loose. So as you tip to the side, feel your jowls hanging. Feel the shoulder drooping down into the elbow. Back to stillness. And now let's try a few more of the belly clenches and the blinking. So closing the eyes and the fists, pulling the down chin back towards the Ming Men, and then reversing it. Everything opens fiercely, and then everything closes. And now let's just try a little bit with the arms behind. The weight of the arms is pressing the spine in at that point. And that lifts the heart and sends the head backwards a little bit, like you're trying to look up at the ceiling. And then you just pull your chin down and in to stretch the cervical spine, the neck. So now you get a sense that your chin is moving down and your heart is moving up, like they're trying to touch each other. A sense that your heart, your thymus, the upper heart, is reaching up to the point in the head. So there's a circuit up from the thymus into the third eye, and then back through that point where the tongue touches the roof of the mouth, into the back brain, down the spine, back into the heart. So there's a circuit. And the hands back into prayer posture. Now let's try a few rowing actions. So just reaching forwards, really letting the spine bow. And then pulling your elbows back. Elbows are trying to meet behind the back. So the spine is getting into that position that it was when we had the arms behind the back. Then reaching forwards, letting the head come forwards, pulling the elbows back, the head reaches back, trying to look up at the ceiling. Shoulder blades really pulling apart, and then the shoulder blades pinching together around the spine. Now back into prayer posture. So just go through the three centers. Tip of the tongue and the roof of the mouth, just feeling that point behind the eyes. Then down into the heart. The heart is a big region. And then down into the lower dantian. Feel the spine having straightened up. When the spine becomes straight like this, you get a sense that your sacrum is underneath the heart and the head rather than the dantian. So this is the feeling we want when we stand. Normally when we're sitting, the dantian is very much the center, the belly, so it's slightly in front of the sacrum. And now, because we've worked on the spine, erecting the spine, now it's the sacrum that's underneath. So when we stand, the sacrum is slightly forwards of where it is when we're sitting. And what enables that really is the arms out front in ward-off, in riding horse. So riding horse. So the dantian is here, and the sacrum is beneath it. So the Ming Men is just behind the dantian. Normally the Ming Men is up because people are too rocked forwards here. So we need this sense of a heavy sacrum that's hanging and stretching the lumbar spine down. Just feel the sinking, so this sense of something flowing down my spine. And then when it gets to the sacrum, it flows equally down each leg. So something in my sacrum has to let go because it's a bit like a dam. It will block. Something has to let go to allow that release down the legs. This is the thing that the average person has no sense of, which is why most people don't have an energetic connection with the ground. They just have a physical one, forceful one. So my relaxation is only possible if I trust. So I have to learn to trust the support of the ground. It sounds straightforward, but we don't. We institute tension, especially in this area, and then that's what I trust. I don't trust this flow down to the ground. If you can really trust the ground, then it stops being simply a hard surface upon which you purchase. It becomes something that you release into and something that flows up into you. So the feet are places of exchange. Energy is flowing in both directions. And it's difficult. And the more I can just relax and trust and release into the ground, the more of the ground will come up into me. And now let's just bring the hands onto the sacrum in this triangle shape. And just let the hands push the sacrum forwards and down. So in the absence of another person to do this for you, we can use our own touch. So when part of your body is touched, your mind just naturally comes there. And the place that's touched wakes up a little. And then bring the hands out and up to the heart. Same shape. Sternum. So when the hands are on the sacrum, a sense that the sacrum is heavy. It's like a heavy stone arrowhead pointing downwards, moving downwards. Now, this is an arrow pointing upwards, so there's a lightness lifting from my chest. And then just bringing the arms into war dog. So when I bring the arms out, there's a sense that the extra weight here is pulling me forward. So I need to make a conscious adjustment, bring my sacrum forwards a little bit to balance it. And remember, when your sacrum is in the right place, then the heart will naturally lift upwards. And now we're going to turn, but turn the hips. So let's try using the hands to turn our own body. I'm just turning my hips with my hands. So what's difficult is as soon as we turn, we tend to seize up around this area. If someone else was pushing you around, then it would be easier in a way because you could just feel yourself relaxing into their effort. They're doing all the work. and then just back to riding horse. Let's just have the fingers up. And now just turning the hips again. So what tends to happen as soon as we think in terms of turning, we're turning the mind, the head, and the shoulders more than we're turning the hips. So here what I'm struggling to do is just keep my shoulders with my hips. So my shoulders are only allowed to turn as much as the hips can turn. And you'll be surprised, you think you're doing it, but the shoulders always turn more than the hips. Because of course we feel the turning in the head and the shoulders. So you just got to keep your feeling in your hips and your dantian. Your head and your shoulders are just going along for the ride. If you can really concentrate and just get down into the hips and the dantian, then you feel the legs turning the hips. Because we're normally turning the shoulders, we don't feel it coming from the legs. This is like a real test of whether you really are in the dantian. And now the same thing, I still want it coming from the hips, but now just doing the 2 circles. But the movement is in the hips, turning around the spine. It's not in my arms. My arms are going with the hips. So in Tai Chi, the movement is in the legs and the waist. So the arms shouldn't really feel like they're doing anything. They're just moving with the body. They're just moving it in and out, away from the body and then towards the body, but subtly, just to create a circle so that they're not going back and forth in the same line. Working on form. getting the mechanics correct, getting it coming from the right place. We tend to be sloppy. So we have a mental image of what it is we're meant to be doing, and then we create that mental image in the body, and very rarely does it correspond to what's meant to be happening. So this is one way in which we lie to ourselves. Make sure it's the hips turning, so it's really turns almost like you could get round here. I mean, you can't, you never get further than the corner, really. We're trying to extend that turn. If you turn as far as you can and you feel that you've turned to the wall, then obviously you've turned your head and your shoulders further than your hips. We're just trying to be honest. Then back to riding horse. Just have the hands behind again. This is really good just for getting the sacrum in the right place. The triangle in front of the sternum. And now feel the weight down the spine, across the sacrum and into the sitting bones of the hip bones and down the legs of the chair. Just try and be aware of the legs of the chair, because it's through those that you're reaching into the ground. Feel the feet flat on the ground, but the weight is obviously going down through the chair. And then bring the arms up into ward off. And now turning the shoulders. So let's just start. Just a modest turn to start with. So we try to keep the mind with the source of the movement rather than in the movement itself. So my shoulders are turning, but that's not where my mind is. My mind is reaching down through the muscles, especially of my back, and into my sitting bones and down into the seat of the chair and through the legs of the chair into the ground. So my mind moves into the muscles that are working rather than into the movement that's the expression of that work. And then we just have to use the mind to create resistance to this. So imagine you're in water. So the turning is quite difficult. Feel the muscles that have to kick in your back, in your belly, and your sides to make this turn happen. So something in me has to really bite in order to turn to the right and then to the left. Imagine someone's in front of you and you're holding hands. As you turn, I'm pulling their arm here. They're pulling my arm here. Then I pull and release my other one. Feeling the muscles involved in pulling something towards me. And imagine that person that you're pulling can gauge the amount of resistance they give you so that you have to work hard, but without it making you aggressive or angry. So here I do have to pull, I really have to pull that person's arm, but without competing with them. Problem with competition is that not only do you want to win, you want to reduce the chances that the other will win. I don't want to prevent the other person from really engaging their best energy with me. Okay, let's stand up again. Now backwards and forwards. I'm moving from one foot into the other. I want to feel the two actions involved. My full leg is straightening to start me moving, and then my empty leg bends in order to become full. So I straighten here and I bend here. I straighten here and I bend here. Now let's try the other foot forwards. So I straighten this leg and I bend this leg. Straighten, bend. So the straightening is pushing me away from the ground, and the bending is pulling me towards the ground. The straightening part, the part where I'm pushing the ground, is small. So if I'm pulling myself into this leg, then I can only pull myself a certain way before I just can't go any more into the foot. So at that point, that's when I'm effectively straightening it, but not enough to actually make me start moving in the other direction. So when I pull the leg, I'm moving forwards, but now I'm starting to straighten it in order to bring me to a halt. And then, if you like, there's a tiny little bit of a movement back before this one kicks in. So the straightening of the leg is really something that I'm doing just to stop myself from going too far into the leg. So it starts straightening, but instantly the other leg kicks in. Pulling myself forwards. Now, if I want to start straightening the leg, then at the very beginning of that, I'm sinking. I'm really, it's like if you're going to push your car, you'd really sink into your legs in order to get a good push into your shoulder. So I'm pulling myself forwards. Now, at some point, I sink even more into that leg in order to start the push back. So this is what it says in the Tao Te Ching. If you want to move in one direction, you first have to move a little bit in the other direction. So it's like loading the spring. So I'm coming forwards. So I'm pulling with the leg, and then it has to kick into its opposite mode, a mode of pushing. So I then need to load the spring. So I'm pulling forwards, then I sink into the leg, and then I can explode out of that. But if I push too much, it's going to bring my body up, which I don't want. You want to stay sunk all the time. So I pull into the leg and I start pushing, but then instantly the back leg starts pulling. And now let's bring it back to riding horse. Now just a little bit of the figure of eight. So trace in the mind to start with. But then my mind has to work on my body to relax this pathway so that it can become a flow of energy as well as simply a shape that's in my mind. So it's energy flowing through the body or around the body. And now let's use it to bring the foot up. Around this foot, and this foot comes up. Scrape the foot along the ground and then scrape it up the leg. And then just rest your foot on the knee to help the leg swell out and get you into the outside edge. We want to feel the mind that enables me to settle in the outside edge. It's a mind that's wanting to go beyond. But nothing separates the good mind from the bad mind like this exercise. The good mind, the light, courageous mind, is the one that's willing to fall out of the circle. The fearful, dark, clotted, bad mind is the one that's always trying to pull into safety. And you can feel as soon as you start thinking to yourself, effectively what's happened is those two minds that should be separating have pulled together into just one speaking, talking mind. And then you've lost the equilibrium because you no longer have the two balanced. So what makes the work internal is that we're looking at the mind. It's not just a physical exercise. And in order to look at the mind needs to be quiet. Okay, let's come back into riding horse. So there's a sense of gathering, focusing, converging into a center, but also a sense of your courage, your inquisitiveness, your curiosity, reaching out beyond that. So if I want my good energy to come out and venture into the world, I have to know how to contain my noise. Otherwise, your interaction with the world is always going to sully it. You'll make things dirty with your clotted self. Let's bring it up. Pumping the legs a little bit. Retrieving that delicate instability of constant movement inside the feet. And then just bring it back. But always a give in the legs. You're always ready to break and flow. You haven't frozen. You've just reached an equilibrium. So what readies the student for internal work is years and years of external work. So remember the story of Milarepa. Milarepa was a murderer. When he was young, he had killed people who had persecuted his mother. And he realized he'd done a terrible thing, so he sought out a spiritual teacher. Marpa, his name was. So Marpa could see, okay, here's someone that's talented that's willing to do the work, but has terrible karma because of these bad things he's done. So what he did, he set him a task of single-handedly building a temple on the mountainside with the rocks that were just strewn around. So it took him however many months. And then Martha came to see the temple. He says, well, very good, you've done a good job. He says, but I think it would be better if it was over there. So he had to dismantle it and then rebuild it. And this went on and on for 12 years. So in order to deal with that bad karma, he needed 12 years of hard manual external work. And then he was ready to begin. Then Martha gave him some meditation exercises, told him to go and find a cave, and then it was another 12 years of internal work before he could come out the master. This is what people have no sense of nowadays. They want all the goodies now. There's no sense of, having to pay your dues, having to do your penance, having to sacrifice, and basically having to make yourself clean inside before you can even think about looking at your mind.